Hey guys, it's me, Michael. How's it going? We are here ready to tear into the second part of our exciting topic of corporate level strategy. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the different types of synergies. We're going to talk about some other factors that related to whether corporate level strategy is successful or not successful. Really great stuff. So, as usual, grab your pen, grab your notebook, take notes. Let me know if you have any questions. So, just a little bit of a review before we dig into that. And last time we spent a good deal of time talking about why do firms diversify, and we said that it boils down to reasons having to do with related diversification. We came up with economies of scope, sharing activities, transferring core competencies, market power, and vertical integration. And then we talked about unrelated diversification as well. We said that maybe efficient internal capital allocation or business restructuring. And finally, we said that there might be some that don't really enhance value, while those others made the company more valuable. But these might line the pockets of managers or make the manager better off without making the company better off. And so we call this diversification for managers' selfish reasons. This is diversifying away managerial employment risk and maybe to increase their pay and compensation. So, talking about synergy, we're going to get into synergy more carefully today. We're going to show you a graph in just a moment that talks about the different types of synergy. This video you watched last time, which was talking about how much to centralize and how much to integrate across your different divisions in your corporation. So, and we talked about the different types of synergy. We said that there could be economies of scope. And we said operational. Operational is physical. Has to do with operations of the company. Corporate is more knowledge-based. It's more cognitive. It has to be sharing the know-how about how to do things across different industries. So, market power, we talked about, hey, if I'm selling sweatshirts, I don't know, when I was back in China, I used to see Jeep. Jeep was a famous brand in China for some reason. Well, I know why. Because the first foreign car company that set up in China was Jeep. Jeep started a corporation back in the 1990s in which they partnered with a Chinese company and they began to make Cherokees. So in Chinese, you say Jeep Cherokee in Chinese, GP Chalaki. Chalaki. Yeah, it's a weird way to say it, right? But they would take that brand name of Jeep and they would stick it on boots. They would stick it on hats. They would stick it on t-shirts. And then they would sell those for more. That's market power. That's using your brand name just to sell products. And then, of course, we know about integration, backward integration or forward integration. There might be some efficiencies in producing our own supplies or maybe distributing our own product. It eliminates middlemen. So with that, we have a graph here. And in this graph, we've got, I'm going to move me out of the way. We've got the vertical axis. We've got operational relatedness. Remember, operational relatedness is more physical. It's more sharing physical stuff. Down here on the horizontal axis, we've got corporate relatedness. Remember, corporate relatedness is more head-based. It's more transferring skills and businesses through the headquarters, right, as opposed to the physical stuff. And so given that, we have 4 different things in a typology where they're both low. Well, if there's not any relationship here, there's not any relationship here, well, then it's unrelated diversification. Where we've got this one is high, that is the physical, but the corporate is low, we've got what we're going to call related constrained diversification. And an example might be through vertical integration and market power. Where this one is high, but this one is low, We've got related link diversification, economies of scope. Where they're both high, we've got both operational corporate relatedness. This is rare and can sometimes it can cause problems regarding what we call diseconomies of scope. That is, it can be cumbersome and hard to manage whenever you have too many potential relationships. It's hard to capture them all. So this is one of the more interesting things about this topic. Now, before you jump ahead, I want you to think about this question. Is diversification good for firm performance? I'm having a hard time talking today. Is diversification good for firm performance, or is it bad for firm performance? In other words, do highly diversified firms do better than firms that are not highly diversified? So another way of thinking about this is, what's the relationship between diversification and performance? And believe it or not, this is something that we don't have to say it depends. This is something that we know what that relationship is. It's a statistical relationship. We know it because it's one of those topics that's been very heavily researched in strategic management. Why has it been so heavily researched? Well, it's an important question. People want to know, what's the relationship between diversification and performance? Should we diversify or should we not diversify? And so researchers have answered that call and begun to do lots of research in this. Some of the very first empirical studies in strategic management were in the area of corporate level strategy. Is diversification good or bad? Because it's kind of central to strategic management. And then another reason is because it's easy. It's easy to study this in today's modern age. I mean, we can measure performance now. We can look at profits. We can look at growth. There are many different ways that we can measure firm performance. We can look at innovation. And then we can measure diversification. We have ways of measuring a company's diversification. We can look at their revenue and say, how much of their revenue is coming from a single industry? How much of their revenue is coming from another industry? How related are those industries? These are things that are easy to measure. So that's been done a lot. And believe it or not, we have a nice answer. I think it's an interesting answer. So in your textbook, we've got a graph that shows this relationship between diversification and performance. And it's not a linear relationship. It's a curvilinear relationship. That is, it doesn't stay the same. It changes over time. Or over diversification levels, I should say, not time. So here we've got a graph. We've got performance here. And there are many ways that we can measure performance. As we talked about earlier, performance can be measured in profits. That's one that we think of. Or we could look at stock returns if we want to look at total returns. Or we could look at market share, growth of market share. Or, we could look at innovation. That's a whole nother topic in strategic management. How do we look at firm performance? But just about any way that we look at performance, we come up with the same answer. Level of diversification. We mentioned in our last class period that this is easy to measure, right? We've got 3 different levels. We've got dominant business or single business. We've got unrelated diversification at the 2 extremes. And in between, we've got the Goldilocks, the just right level of diversification, related diversification. We had 2 here. We had related constrained and related linked. And go back and look at those definitions for what those mean. They're similar, slight differences in exactly, technically, what they refer to. So what's the relationship? Yeah, this is kind of cool. Yeah. Hey. Moderation, baby. Moderation. We choose something. If we don't diversify, we don't do as well as if we have some diversification. But if we go too far, we tend to not do as well. So this is kind of interesting. This is kind of interesting because it shows, it's proof. Well, I should say proof. It's support for our hypothesis that strategy and synergy matters. It's real. We know that companies that have some sort of diversification strategy, as long as it's related, as long as they're capturing synergy, they do better. But if they go too far, they get into stuff that they don't understand and they don't do quite as well. Now, I'd like to point out that this is what we call a statistical relationship. And you've had a few statistics courses now, so I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We could look at this as a scatter plot in which we had like 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 companies here, in which we were looking at performance and we were looking at the level of diversification. This is a trend line. It's an average. So that doesn't mean that every company that's here is going to do the best, and every company here that's going to do badly, and every company that's here that's going to do badly. We have some companies that are up here. We have some companies that are up here. We have some companies that are down here. But this shows that on average, those companies that follow a related diversification strategy do best. Yeah, there are companies up here, for example, Wrigley's. Wrigley's is a company that produces one product and produced one product. Actually, they have a kind of a dominant business. They went from a single business to a dominant business. They have mints and candies and so forth, but those are related. The one product they chew is chew. The one product that they produce is gum, right? But they've done well. They're a Fortune 500 company, or at least they were a Fortune 500 company. I should say that. I'm not sure that they're still Fortune 500. You got companies that are here that are unrelated businesses, but still do extremely well. And then you've got some companies that are down here. Just because you're putting the pieces in place, you still got to execute, right? So, and this is something, because a lot of my research is in the area of emerging economies, in particular in Asia. We find that Asian companies, this doesn't hold so much. That conglomerates, those companies that are all over the place, still do better. So what I did is I've drawn another line here. I added this one into the other graph. Do emerging economies? Well, we don't know. We're still doing research in this area. The research is beginning to show us that yes, this relationship holds for emerging economies, but that it's not as pronounced. It may be a little bit flatter, or it may go up farther before it actually drops down. So last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to take a look at this video talking about conglomerates. That is those firms that are unrelated diversification. We call those conglomerates. They no longer work. So here's the last graph that's in your textbook. Basically, here this shows different things. These are the different strategies regarding diversification or corporate level strategy. We've got the value creating strategies that we talked about. We've got the value neutral, and then we've got the value reducing. These are different types of diversification strategies. Hopefully these will affect firm performance. So we've got a causal arrow showing that this affects this and this affects this. However, we've got some moderators. We've got the capital market intervention and the market for managerial talent. This is moderating the relationship here and the relationship here. We've got the internal governance, which is moderating this relationship. And then we've got a strategy implementation, which is moderating this relationship. All right, so that's going to wrap up everything for corporate level strategy. In fact, that's going to wrap up everything that's going to be on your next exam, exam 2. After that exam, we will get into some more exciting topics. We still need to cover mergers and acquisitions, and international, and corporate governance. So I hope you found this lesson useful. Until next time, this is Michael saying, study hard.